Hello and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about ENHYPEN's Drunk-Dazed, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the teasers, how they relate to the concept photos, and what we can expect from the upcoming comeback. Now, with the release of Drunk-Dazed around the corner, today we're gonna take a look at all the clues that we have so far to try and guess the possible concept and what this mysterious lady might have to do with all of that. Once the video comes out, I will update this theory and explain every aspect of the song and how it relates to ENHYPEN's concept as a whole, but until then, let's jump right in and see what we have so far. Now, as I mentioned in my intro the invitation video, Drunk-Dazed seems to be a song that continues to explore ENHYPEN's first experience in crossing the border between reality and fantasy. If in Given and Taken, the boys woke up on day one in a new world that is the representation of their dreams coming true, Drunk-Dazed seems to be focusing on the confusion and excitement that this transition actually entails. This is an idea that is foreshadowed by the title of the album itself, because the carnival is a concept that implies both a sense of celebration and euphoria, but also an underlying idea of chaos, confusion and subversion. Even if at first glance these feelings seem to be very contrasting, during the carnival these emotions actually coexist in the very same space, and this is because the carnival is an event that allows you to free yourself from the constrictions of reality and show a new side of yourself that is liberated by chaos. Now, when it comes to the concept photos, this sense of disorder and confusion is especially evident in the hype and down versions, because if in down we see the boys crossing the border in a series of teasers that are meant to make you feel dizzy and disoriented, hype shows us that the boys actually cross the border by getting intoxicated on substances that alter their perception of reality. Now, this idea was already foreshadowed back in Given and Taken, because back then we not only saw Hee-sung taking a pill that triggered a series of painful visions, but we also saw Jake checking in on Nikki, who appeared to be catatonic. Those visuals heavily suggested that the concept of intoxication will be very important in the story as a whole. And this makes sense, because getting hyped on substances essentially allows them to transcend reality and make their fantasies become real. You see, in this context, we can say that the hype is literally the border. Them getting intoxicated makes them go beyond themselves and reach a whole different world where they feel like in paradise, but this feeling of eternal bliss is an illusion, because this reality is a carnival where everything is flipped upside down. The world of fantasy is a place where up is down and down is up and life is mixed with death, so even if the boys might feel like going up, that is, like going in paradise, chances are that they're actually going down, meaning that they're giving in to temptation. Now, in the songs that we have so far, this concept is also explored with a lot of references to William Shakespeare, and when put together, these references essentially tell us the story of a boy on a quest to achieve the eternity of the soul that is eventually seduced by a dark lady who blinds his judgment and makes him fall into temptation. Now, in Shakespeare, the seduction of the Dark Lady is something that drives the boy away from eternity, because her temptation is the physical kind, but judging by what we see in the teasers, in ENHYPEN's story, this concept will be flipped upside down. And this is because when the boys cross the border, they essentially achieve eternity by becoming vampires. Now, as you can imagine, this is the exact opposite of what Shakespeare had in mind when he was talking about the eternity of the soul. But since ENHYPEN's world is a carnival where order is overthrown, the boy's eternal transformation is not threatened by temptation like it was in the poem, but is actually caused by it. As ENHYPEN showed us in both Outro Cross the Line and Intro the Invitation, the boys are lured in by a voice that essentially promises everything that they ever wanted. Back in Flickr, for instance, this connection between the two worlds was first introduced by describing the flicker as a signal that allows two individuals to communicate at a long distance. But in Intro the Invitation, this flicker has become a light that blinds and deceives, and this sudden change might actually imply that the boys fell into a trap that they couldn't possibly foresee. As the outro showed us, the boys were led to cross the border by a wolf and eventually reach the castle of the vampire, but even if at first the reaction was a positive one, soon enough the vampire showed its true colors and their dream essentially became a nightmare. Now, in some of my past videos, I actually assumed that the voice that was calling them was none other than their own, because in many respects their journey across the border can easily be seen as a journey inside of themselves. After watching the teasers, however, I think it's safe to say that the voice that they hear actually belongs to the woman that we see in the video, which could possibly be the Dark Lady that Shakespeare mentions in his poems. You see, in the sonnets, the Dark Lady is a temptress that corrupts the innocence of the boy by blending his judgment with a type of love that is a source of lies. So this comparison is very fitting in this context, because if the woman in the video is the one who attracts them with the flicker, she is actually a temptress that is luring them in with a lie. As it turns out, however, there might also be other clues that foreshadow the true identity of this woman, and the first that I want to talk about is actually a sentence that can be found in the description box of the videos. After the credits, the description reads Dark Moon with an hyphen, and even if for now we don't know what this means, this sentence might actually be the official title of an ENHYPEN storyline. Just like Tomorrow by Together story is now called The Star Seekers with Tomorrow by Together, an hyphen story might be called Dark Moon with an hyphen. But if this is the case, we actually need to understand what this is and how it fits into the story. Now, to some extent, I think that this title might actually refer to both the new world that the boys wake up in on day one, as well as the woman that we see in the video. You see, if we take a look at the definition of the dark moon, a dark moon refers to the last visible crescent of a waning moon that can be seen when the sun and the moon are in conjunction. Now, right off the bat, this is very interesting because the conjunction of the sun and the moon is an event that is also referenced in the up version of the album. This is because in the background we can actually see two statues belonging to Apollo and Artemis, who are the twin gods belonging to Greek mythology that are respectively associated to the sun and the moon. If Apollo is the god of poetry, music, prophecy, sunlight, and healing, Artemis is the goddess of the ant, the wilderness, wild animals, the moon, and chastity. In Greek mythology, Apollo was often associated to Helios, who is the personification of the sun, while Artemis was connected to Selene, who is the personification of the moon. And what's interesting about this is that both of these gods are actually featured in the myth of the first vampire, who is an Italian man called Ambrogio who fell in love with Selene and was punished by both gods because of that. Now, the story of Ambrogio here is a false myth that supposedly started to circulate in the 19th century. This is a story that has characters belonging to Greek mythology but does not belong to Greek mythology itself, and as we'll see in a second, this is a tale that might actually be very relevant in an hyphen storyline, not only because the boy in the myth becomes a vampire as the result of the love of a woman, but also because Ambrogio is an Italian man, which would actually explain the Italian lines in Intro Walk the Line, as well as the references to the Carnival of Venice that can be found in Given and Taken. Now, in the story, Ambrogio travels to Greece to see the Oracle of Delphi, which is the high priestess of the Temple of Apollo, who actually delivers a man a prophecy involving blood and the moon. During his stay, Ambrogio falls in love with Selene, who in the story is a goddess that serves as a maiden in the temple, but this love enrages Apollo because he wanted Selene for himself. Because of this reason, Apollo curses Ambrogio to never being able to walk in the sunlight to see Selene again, and the man is so devastated by this that he decides to descend into the underworld to ask Hades to grant him immortality. To this request, Hades actually replies by offering a pact. If Ambrogio is still the silver bow of Artemis, Hades will grant him immortality, so the man accepts because that's the only way that he can reunite with Selene. When Ambrogio goes to steal the bow, however, Artemis catches him and curses him to be allergic to silver. In order to save himself from her rage, Ambrogio swears his loyalty to the goddess, and after proving his value, Artemis actually grants him powers that transform him into an hunter as good as herself. Artemis also gives him the bow that Hades wanted to fulfill the pact, so Ambrogio gains his immortality but loses his soul as a result. If this wasn't enough, when the man comes back from the underworld, he actually discovers that Apollo made Selene immortal and now she's dying. In order to save her life, Ambrogio brings her to Artemis, and Artemis restores her divinity by taking her to the moon, which from then on will be Selene's home forever. Even if the two lovers are both immortal now, Ambrogio and Selene will never be able to be together, so the people that Ambrogio will turn into vampires will be their children instead. Since his blood is like poison to people, they will carry the very same curse that destroyed the two lovers, but the moon, who is their mother, will always protect them. Now, if we compare this story to ENHYPEN's, there are quite a lot of elements that they have in common with one another. As I mentioned earlier, they both have references to Italy, because if Ambrogio was Italian, ENHYPEN sing in Italian as well. Both stories feature Apollo and Artemis. Given and Taken showed the boys mimicking the motion of a bow. The teaser shows us the boys undergoing a journey in an environment that looks very much like the underworld, and much like the references to Shakespeare, the downfall of Ambrogio is eventually caused by the love of a woman. This might imply that the lady in the teaser is none other than Selene herself. She's the incarnation of the moon and the reason why the boys became vampires, but in contrast to the story where the moon herself is a victim, this one is a dark moon which, much like the Dark Lady, might be a temptress that is luring them in. Now the reason why I think that is because the dark moon is usually associated to both darkness and femininity, and one of the many figures that are connected to this type of moon is none other than Lilith, which according to many sources is the first wife of Adam, the first real woman before Eve, as well as the first vampire herself. After being expelled from the Garden of Eden, Lilith turned evil and transformed into a demon that seduced their victims and fed on their life force, and her children are considered by many sources as the first members of the vampire race. If Selene is the moon, Lilith is the dark moon. She is a temptress, a vampire, and quite honestly, the perfect embodiment of what Shakespeare's Dark Lady was supposed to represent. So even if we don't know who this woman is, it's very possible that her character might have been inspired by these sources. One thing that we know for sure, however, is that whoever this woman is, she's definitely involved in the boys' transformation into vampires, and this idea is also reinforced by the teaser itself, where we see the boys dancing in a fluorescent room with a lot of writings on the wall. We see words like desire, hunger, and blood, which all express the feelings that they are going through. We see the phrase "only in blood we breathe," which also appeared in another teaser and foreshadows their transition into vampires, but we also see the phrase bewitched, bothered, and bewildered, which is none other than a song by Ella Fitzgerald about a woman who is blindly in love with a man that she loves no matter what he does. Now this reference is actually very interesting because the original version of the song actually comes from the musical Pal Joy, which actually follows the story of a man who manipulates and seduces a woman in order to get her money. Even if in the story the man is not a good man, the woman is literally bewitched, bothered, and bewildered by him. So this reference might actually imply that much like the woman, the boy might be manipulated by the lady because she bewitched them with her temptation. Now if this is the case, then it's entirely possible that the theme of intoxication might actually be used as a metaphor for the boy's judgment being clouded by the vampire. Since vampires are known for putting their victims into a trance, the hype that they experience might also be induced by the woman that we see in the video. And this idea might also be reinforced by the red drinks that the boys are drinking in the teasers. If in teaser 1 we see Sonu walking down a corridor with a red drink in his hand, in the second we see a table full of red drinks in the background, so the choice of this color might imply that the boys are getting drunk on blood and are getting intoxicated because of that. This could also explain why in the video the boys seem to be celebrating a birthday that actually ends up becoming a bloody birthday. This is the moment of their transition. They get drunk on blood and this causes their rebirth as vampires, which would also explain why on the wall we see a poster that says that they are too young to die but also too drunk to live. On the other side of the wall, however, we also see the phrase "right till you die," and this is an interesting one because if you look closely, ENHYPEN's storyline also includes a lot of cars. We see Jake lying on top of a car in the debut trailer, we see a truck in the Dawn version of Border Day 1, and we also see half a car in the Dawn version of Border Carnival, and this is very suspicious because these visuals might actually imply that the car might be involved in their transition. Now if the story will follow the story of Ambrogio, this could imply that after getting intoxicated, the boys might literally ride till they die and cross the border as a result of an accident. This could imply that the boys end up in the underworld where, like Ambrogio, they make a pact not to die. But in doing so, the Dark Moon also turns them into vampires, which would also justify the bloody rain that we see in the video. You see, the red rain is an event that is often considered a very bad omen. Many cultures actually connect it to the end of the world or to something bad that is about to take place, but in the video we see that this event is limited to Sonu, and this might actually imply that much like Ambrogio is having a vision that foreshadows the transition that they are about to experience. To know if any of this is right or wrong, however, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!